Welcome. I would like to welcome you to episode 319 of the Unpopular Podcast. This is the man, the myth, the legend, Jalen Hunter. And here at the Unpopular Podcast, I'm not really asking you to agree with me. I'm asking you to hear me out. So I'm going to start off this episode with the news that happened. I think it happened last Friday, actually. And that is the Bears trading away their first number one overall pick to the Panthers in exchange for 2 first-round picks, including the 9th pick, I believe, and DJ Moore. This means something. Well, of course, when you do a trade, however many teams are involved, it means something for those teams. But this trade in particular means something for both teams. It kind of confirms something for the Bears, and it also kind of confirms something for the Panthers. For the Bears, there was reports saying that the Bears were kind of mulling between if they were going to let go of Justin Fields and go for maybe a Bryce Johnson or a Bryce Young, maybe a Anthony Richardson, maybe a CJ Stroud. You didn't know that, but there was a lot they could do with the number one overall pick, but they necessarily didn't need it, especially if they weren't going for a quarterback. If you weren't going for a quarterback, you don't really need the number one overall pick, especially when there are teams like, i.e., the Panthers, or like other teams that could use that number one overall pick for a quarterback. So many felt, and people pretty much felt and knew that the the Bears were going to trade the number one overall pick if they didn't, or if they committed to keeping Justin Fields, which of course they pretty much came out and said they were. It was just a matter of who were they going to trade it to. So with them trading it to the Panthers, this solidifies that they're not going to draft a quarterback. They're going to try to build a adequate team around Justin Fields. You also see that by getting DJ Moore, which is a bona fide, a solidified number one wide receiver. Now, if you look at the receiver core for the Bears, you have, DJ Moore. Now you have Chase Claypool. You have Mooney. Like, they have a comp. Oh, and you also had commit at the tight end position. They have some skilled positions. The Bears have never really been good at identifying offensive talent. Now, I don't say that, especially when we talk about the draft. Did you know that DJ Moore has more career passing yards? DJ Moore has more career passing yards than I think any wide receiver in Bears history. Needless to say, the Bears don't really do offense too well. So getting DJ Moore in this trade, and now you're having a plethora of picks, I think it was a win for the Bears. You're hearing, Jalen Carter. You're hearing multiple. I think that they're probably going to go defense, which this is just so the Bears. I mean, the Bears just got, 2 linebackers that had Edmonds and another linebacker, I forgot, which the Bears are going to Bears. I think, again, hopefully in the draft, they are aggressive when it comes to offensive line now. You don't know what's going to happen with Montgomery. It looks like he's going to test free agency. I don't know, but I do know that the Bears now do not have the number one overall pick, and I do think that they came up as winners when we talk about this trade with the Panthers. Because not only do you have multiple first-round picks and second-round picks for next year, you also have DJ Moore, who is a number one receiver. And one thing that we've talked about for the longest is Justin Fields needs weapons. And you have to build an adequate team around him to assess if he is the quarterback of the future or not. So I definitely think it's a win for them. And the fact that you did need the number one overall pick, which I know is crazy to think, how do you not need the number one overall pick? The number one overall pick, if there's not a transcendent player that's not a quarterback, you usually, and your team doesn't need that position, you usually don't need it. Like if you're going to get a Aaron Donald, if you're going to get a There are some players, of course, that are just so good that they're good enough to be number one overall picks and not a quarterback. In that case, you go for it. But in this draft, there really isn't a player that just leaps and bounds is better. Now, maybe next year when they have like Caleb Love or whatever. Or no, Caleb Williams. But yeah, you didn't really need the number one overall pick. So I think what the Bears got for the number one overall pick was a win. And for the Panthers, I also think it's a win. And it also solidifies something with the Panthers. The Panthers, it's clear that they're going for a quarterback. I mean, they just lost Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold's going to the 49ers as the backup, or I don't know what he's going to be. But he's at the 49ers. Getting the number one overall pick solidifies two things for me. One, that they're definitely going to get a quarter. Here's something. I have a theory. My theory is one of two things are going to happen with this number one overall pick for the Panthers. They're either A, going to trade the number one overall pick to the Ravens to get Lamar Jackson. I think that's less likely because I just don't think that's going to happen. You don't trade that much and DJ Moore for the number one overall pick to then flip it and give it to the Ravens. I just don't see that happening. But that could happen. That's what I think. If I were the Panthers, I think number two, the second option is more likely, and that is they get a quarterback at the number one spot. Whether, like I said, Bryce Young, whether that's Anthony Richardson from Florida, whether that's C.J. Stroud from Ohio State. I think that they're going to get that. But here's my thing. I understand the whole quarterback of the future thing. I get it. But Lamar Jackson is 26, and I'm not going to make this a Lamar Jackson episode, even though there is a topic that I will kind of focus on Lamar Jackson. But this isn't going to be a Lamar Jackson episode, but I understand the money. I understand what he's asking for. And I understand that what he's asking for, clearly a lot of teams, including the Ravens, the team that he's currently on, do not want to do that. But you're talking about a generational talent that's in his prime. He's 26 years old. And now you're hearing people talk about, well, he's not available and he's always injured. He's not always injured. Yes, he was injured the last 2 years, but look at what he's won 70% of the Ravens games. So if I were the Panthers and I got the number one overall pick, and don't get me wrong, even if they don't trade the number one overall pick for Lamar Jackson, which I think it's very unlikely, I do think that they did become they are winners in this. It's a win-win for both teams, the Bears and the Panthers. You are able to draft a quarterback. Even though I wish they would not have given, or wish they didn't have to give up DJ Moore, because again, he is a number one receiver. They did get the number one overall pick, so it was a win-win for both teams. But again, you have a 26-year-old former MVP right there that you can go for. Now, again, I understand the salary cap, and I understand what Lamar Jackson's asking for, but again, it's Lamar Jackson, and he'll be 26. And I ask, what is more of a sure thing right now? Bryce Young panning out to be a great quarterback in the league, or Lamar Jackson continuing to do what he's been doing? Anthony Richardson, who has all the talent in the world and is blowing people away in the combine or whatever, or Lamar Jackson, who has already won an MVP, to continue what he's doing. That's all I'm saying, man. But I do think if we look at the trade, for what the Panthers got and what the Bears got, I do think it was a win-win for both teams. There was a report that came out, and we'll move on from there. There's a report that came out saying that, I think Diana Rossini said that that Aaron Rodgers gave the Jets a list of players that he wanted them to try to acquire. Alan Lazard was on it, I think. Mercedes Lewis, Randall Cobb, and Odell Beckham Jr. That means one thing for me. That means that Aaron Rodgers has decided where he wants to go if they do what he says. He wants control of a team. I look at this Aaron Rodgers situation in three ways. I look at it through Aaron Rodgers' eyes. I look at it through Green Bay's eyes, and I look at it through the Jets' eyes. Let's start with Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers, I understand his thinking. I understand that you want me. I understand I will go down as one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever play. I also understand that my services are needed in Green Bay. My services are also needed in New York. So I'm going to try. If you want me, this is what you have to do to get me. It's not popular. It's not the best. I mean, I know everyone doesn't do it. Everyone wouldn't do it. I probably wouldn't do it in the sense of what Aaron Rodgers. Because if you think about it, look at the team that the Jets. Let's just talk about the Jets right now. Look at the team that the Jets have. You have Elijah Moore, even though he's kind of in the doghouse right now. You have, Garrett Wilson. You have Corey Davis. Randall Cobb can't get open. Alan Lazard, I thought he was going to make a bigger leap than he did last year, seeing as though he had to be the number one receiver until Christian Watson just went crazy. Mercedes Lewis is old as hell. He's good blocking, but he's not the best at a catching tight end. You already have pieces for New York. Why? The only reason why you would try to go get these pieces, and Odell Beckham Jr. is asking for $20 million a year, which I understand, but he's trying. And Odell Beckham Jr. is trying to be one of the first players to bridge the NBA and NFL. And I don't mean that in the sense of he plays in the NBA and NFL. I mean, he's trying to be the first NFL player to get an NBA-like contract. While popularity, I understand, and while talent, I get he's a very talented quarterback. I mean, a wide receiver. I get that. But that's a lot asking from one, a wide receiver, and two, a wide receiver that's coming off an ACL tear. So I don't know if he's going to get that, but if I'm Aaron Rodgers, we saw when Odell Beckham Jr. was healthy, he's one of the best wide receivers in the league. You pair him with a Garrett Wilson, you pair him with a Corey Davis, that's gonna be crazy. If I'm Aaron Rodgers, I don't want to go to a team that isn't better than my current team. So I get that on Aaron Rodgers' point. It's a bad look because you're already demanding things, and there's already been a stigma that Aaron Rodgers is tough to deal with and tough to work with. So I understand that this might not be the best thing, to do. But I get if I'm Aaron Rodgers, the ball's kind of in my court. So if I'm Green Bay, like I said, I'm going to break this down in three ways. I just did Aaron Rodgers. Now I'm going to do Green Bay, and I'm going to do the Jets. If I'm Green Bay, two things are true. We don't know what Jordan Love is until he gets adequate playing time. He can't get maybe a couple minutes here and there, a couple drives here and there. We need to know what we have in Jordan Love, even if that means that we're not good next year. I understand that Aaron Rodgers is arguably, I think he's better than Brett Favre. So I understand that Aaron Rodgers, in my opinion, is the best quarterback your franchise ever had. And I also understand that you just gave him a 2-year contract or something. So you still owe him money. And I know, they reported last week that they're pretty much want to rip the Band-Aid off. Hell, even the GM came out and was talking about, if Aaron Rodgers come back, that's not really in our plans. But if it happens, hey, it happens. I think Green Bay is ready to rip the Band-Aid off, man. They're ready to get rid of Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers comes with a lot. Aaron Rodgers comes with a lot. And basketball culture, like I just talked about with Odell Beckham Jr., basketball culture is not football culture. You can get a LeBron James, and LeBron James says, we don't want Andrew Wiggins. We want, even though Andrew Wiggins is the number one overall pick, get him out of here. Bring Kevin Love. I get that. Because you're getting LeBron James, and we understand the presence that LeBron James brings, you're going to trade the number one overall pick in Andrew Wiggins for Kevin Love. And it works out. I think we saw Tom Brady do this. We saw Tom Brady say, "Yo, I'm coming to Tampa Bay. I'm also bringing Rob Gronkowski, who is arguably the greatest tight end of all time." Tom Brady came with 6 rings? So you can do that. And you're going to a franchise in Tampa Bay that is kind of starving for success. They were on a mean playoff drought. So it's like you get Tom Brady. Yeah, you have to do this, and this, but it's Tom Brady. While Aaron Rodgers will go down as one of the greatest quarterback talents to ever play, he only has 1 Super Bowl. Yes, he has 4 MVPs, but he has 1 Super Bowl. So it's like, if you're Green Bay, dude, it was a good run. It's very rare these days that one player stays for one team, or his entire career. So it's like, you had a good run. You're becoming more baggage, and especially, and we'll talk about Jalen Ramsey in a second, but one thing that's able to give Green Bay an out is the fact that they struggled last year, and they didn't even make the playoffs. It would be a tough ask if Aaron Rodgers won the Super Bowl last year, or if Aaron Rodgers made it to the Super Bowl last year, or if Aaron Rodgers won the MVP. This would be a tougher conversation if you were Green Bay, because it's like, how do we give up on the reigning MVP? But, and don't get me wrong, Aaron Rodgers hasn't been easy to handle from reports this entire time, but because it's like, you can get away with it, you can get over it because they're winning. Or he's still, they've been 13-3 before last year, 13-3 the last 2 years. So it's like, if I'm Green Bay, man, wow, yes, I understand if we don't. They want to rip the Band-Aid off. They want to. And as you're seeing, it looks like reports are saying that the Jets and the Green Bay Packers are working on a deal to now get Allen Lazard. So it seems like, Allen Lazard is a good wide receiver. While he's not number 1, he's a good wide receiver. So it's just like, take Allen Lazard. If you need Mercedes Lewis, take them. Take Randall Cobb. We don't even want Randall Cobb. Green Bay does not want to start the 2023 season with Aaron Rodgers on their roster. And I understand it. Again, it's very rare these days that one player stays with a franchise the entire time. So I get it. And if I'm the Jets find themselves in the most difficult situation out of the 3. You have not really had a legit quarterback since Mark Sanchez. And you have the possibility of getting one of the best quarterbacks the league has ever seen. While, yes, he's not in his prime, but just a year ago, or just 2 years ago, he won his 4th MVP. So the Jets find themselves in a difficult position. I you have a player that's asking for a lot off the rip. You're asking for the Jets have a good offense. The Jets have a good offensive roster, and you have a player coming in asking off the rip for a bunch of stuff. You're asking, oh, now we got to spend more money on players that we don't necessarily want, but we want you. Yeah, I don't know about that. And I say the Jets are in the toughest position because you have to ask yourself, are we going to do we understand we want Aaron Rodgers. Do we do what he wants? Or do we not do what he wants and jeopardize losing Aaron Rodgers? Because it seems like if Aaron Rodgers sent you a list of this is what you have to do to get me, then Aaron Rodgers pretty much wants to go there, or it doesn't mind going there. So are we at risk of losing Aaron Rodgers? And if you do lose Aaron Rodgers in the sweepstakes, what do you do next? Again, I'm not making this a Lamar Jackson pod, but do you try to go for Lamar Jackson? Do you offer him $200 million guaranteed and say, hey, this is what we got for you? We have Wilson, we have Moore, we have pieces. This is $200 million guaranteed. We'll work out the deal. Boom. I think they should have done that originally, but hey, it looks like Aaron Rodgers is there. So I don't know if I'm the Jets, bro. Like, yo, I want Aaron Rodgers, but at this cost, like, come on now. This is not how a relationship works. You're not about to strong arm me, and you're not even here. Like, this is a legit strong arm. Yo, you're gonna bring my people over, and then you have me. Like, that doesn't work. Like, it doesn't work that way. They have not built trust. I guess this is one side building trust with the other side, which is the Jets building trust in Aaron Rodgers. But Aaron Rodgers hasn't shown anything for the Jets to hold on to trust. Again, I'm not saying that the Jets shouldn't go for Aaron Rodgers, but what I'm saying is you can't have Aaron Rodgers dictate your franchise, and he's not even there. And if you really want to be honest about Aaron Rodgers and look at the moves that he's quote unquote forced the Green Bay Packers to make and how they turned out. Again, Randall Cobb can't create separation because he's old. Mercedes Lewis is a better blocking tight end than a regular tight end because he's older. Allen Lazard was supposed to make the leap and be a number one receiver. He wasn't, which is one of the biggest reasons why the offense struggled last year. You want my opinion on what's going to happen? I think that Aaron Rodgers is going to go to the Jets. It's tough for me to see Aaron Rodgers back in a Green Bay uniform because of everything that's happened this offseason, because of some things that the general managers have said. How do you go back into a locker room where they know you really don't want to be there? I don't think that Aaron Rodgers is going to retire because it's like $50 million he's leaving on the table. I just think Aaron Rodgers is going to go to the Jets. I think the Jets are going to get him Allen Lazard. I don't think that they're going to – they could get Odell Beckham Jr. I don't know. But I think that they're going to get Aaron Rodgers. And I think you're going to look at the Jets. And even boy, the Jets would be tough, you know. It'd be tough. I think they're in their, of course, division. You're only fighting with, well, not only, but it's a tough division too. I mean, you have the Bills, the Patriots, and the Dolphins. And the Dolphins, which we'll talk about in a second, just made a big move. So I don't know, man. I get it. I get it on all three fronts. Aaron Rodgers front, the Green Bay Packers front, and the Jets. But I don't know. I think this is a fascinating situation because Aaron Rodgers doesn't look good right now. He looks more diva-ish than ever. But I understand, like, if you're gonna move, especially when you've been with an organization your entire career, you want to go to something that looks or that feels familiar in football or in sports. One thing that feels familiar, if you're not from the place, is bring some of my buddies along, which is Alan Lazard, Mercedes Lewis, Randall Cobb. So I get it, but I am interested and curious just to see exactly how this ends for Aaron Rodgers and ends for the Green Bay Packers, because I think the worst case scenario for the Green Bay Packers, at least in this point, is Aaron Rodgers returning. And I think the worst case scenario for the Jets is if they make all these moves and Aaron Rodgers then comes back and says, yeah, no, I'm staying with Green Bay. So now you have Alan Lazard and all these pieces, and it's like, what do we do? Because then you'll be looking for a quarterback. And that's another thing that looks bad, is Aaron Rodgers holding out. Like, bro, your season, you didn't make it to the playoffs. So your season ended in a minute. And I understand the free agency just started, but this is holding up 2 teams now. And that's a bad look. I'm going to be honest with you. That's a bad look that you're holding up 2 teams from being able to make multiple free agent moves. And as you're seeing, there are really good free agents like Hargrove going to the 49ers from the Eagles. Like, come on, bro. Like, and I'm not saying that, the Green Bay Packers would have got him or the Jets would have got him, but they could have went for him, or maybe a Jimmy Ward. So, I don't know. I'm interested to see how this situation and this whole thing plays out, honestly. So, let's move forward. So, Jimmy G is a Raider now. And I hear a lot of people say that Jimmy G is a perfect fit for the Raiders. When you think of Raiders, you think of risk. When you think of Vegas, you think of risk. And then you have Jimmy G. Just Jimmy G looks like the Raider. Jimmy G, the one problem that Derek Carr had was he didn't risk it all like Jimmy G would. And that rubbed the Raiders the wrong way. So I guess we're not having honest conversations about the Raiders or Jimmy G. But I guess I will. The Raiders are one of those teams that bank on history. The Bears do that as well. The Raiders have a rich history. They've had some good pieces. They've won a Super Bowl. I mean, hell, they had John Madden. The Raiders have a good history. We know about the black hole. Like, we know what comes with the Raiders. And if you look at the roster, the Raiders also just got Jacoby Myers, I think, which was one of the top wide receiver free agents that they could have got, or that was on the market. So, pair them with Hunter Renfrow and Devontae Adams and Darren Waller and Josh Jacobs. I think that's a good nucleus. But you talk about them going for Jimmy G, and I think that Jimmy G landed in a good spot. I do think that at least you have pieces and weapons to succeed. We talked about Jimmy G and what he needs to succeed. He needs a good running game. He needs a good offensive line, which he doesn't have. He needs some offensive pieces, which he has a plethora of now. And he needs a good defense, which he really doesn't have. I mean, you have Chandler Jones and Max Crosby, but that's about it. But the Raiders are in one of the toughest divisions in football. I mean, I think that the Broncos are going to get better with Sean Payton now. I mean, the Kansas City Chiefs just won the Super Bowl. And while their offensive line is doing some retooling, and I don't know how I don't know how good their offensive line is going to be if they keep Orlando Brown or not. But they did just win the Super Bowl and they have Patrick Mahomes. And of course you have the Chargers and Justin Herbert. Now we'll talk about them in a second, but you still have Justin Herbert, you have Keenan Allen, you know. Even with this move, even if you look at everything that we saw last year, the Raiders still have the fourth worst, or the fourth best, let's say, the fourth best quarterback in their division. Jimmy G is a good player, but to me, he's not a player that can put you over the hump. If Jimmy G is your quarterback, I'm not thinking to myself, whoo, that is a championship caliber team. And he just had the 49ers. And while, yes, the 49ers went to the Super Bowl again, there was somebody on my Unpopular podcast, TikTok. Make sure you go follow. But there was somebody that said the defense lost it for the 49ers in that Super Bowl. I think it was 2019 against the Chiefs. While, yes, they did give up a 10-point lead in the fourth quarter, Jimmy G missed several passes, including the most notable one, which was Emmanuel Sanders, and he overthrew him like 10 yards. And Emmanuel Sanders had absolutely nobody on him. I think Jimmy G is good, and I think that, he'll look good in a Raiders uniform. But damn, this is really turning into a Lamar Jackson fact. But when you have someone like a Lamar Jackson on the market, pretty much, and you settle for Jimmy G. Now, Jimmy G, and honestly, which you're hearing a lot of people say it, I don't even think Jimmy G is an upgrade from Derek Carr. I think that people were overly harsh on Derek Carr, in my opinion. I get the lack of success, but again, I always list out so many things or so many problems with the Vegas Raiders at this point. And it's like, who can succeed with that? Now, I'll say this. I don't think that Derek Carr, I'm not just talking about last year. Last year, we saw a lot of people have a bad year, but last year was a bad year for Derek Carr. I'm not going to say it wasn't. But do you think Jimmy G is going to be that much better? Hey, y'all know me, man. If I am wrong, I'll come in here and say I was wrong. But I just don't believe that Jimmy G is going to be drastically different for the Raiders. I get that it's better than what they had, which was nobody at the time. But, and again, even when we look here today with the weapons that they have and Jimmy G, I think the Broncos are going to be better next year because they have Sean Payton. So it's like, I'm still going to pick them fourth in the division. And when we look in the AFC in general, what's going to happen with the Ravens? You still have Kansas City Chiefs. Like, you still have the Bengals. I'm not saying that the Raiders didn't get better. I'm just saying if they did get better, I don't think it's because of Jimmy G. And I guess you can ask yourself, like, who was out there? Who could you have gotten outside of, the big name? But I don't know. And maybe they were really out on, or maybe Aaron Rodgers was really out on the Raiders, because it's like, I think Aaron Rodgers is better than Jimmy G right now. I think Jimmy G is going to, if you're going to get a quarterback and you need a quarterback and Jimmy G is available, I think he's cool. I think if you have no other options and you have Jimmy G, not saying he's a trash quarterback, but if you have no other good options and Jimmy G is available, you go after Jimmy G. I get it. But it's hard for me to think, especially with the quarterbacks that's out there, that they didn't have a better option. So, damn, and I'm gonna end it by saying, but shouts out to Jimmy G. Hey, prove me wrong. I will come on this platform and say I was wrong, but I don't think I am. You're gonna look up and think, ooh, damn, maybe it wasn't all Derek Carr's fault. Or you could say, well, yeah, I guess he is an improvement. Now come on here and say that. So, like I said, and let's move forward. Like I said, last year, you saw a lot of people have down years. I mean, you saw Russell Wilson have his worst year. Aaron Rodgers had a bad year. It was a bad year for a lot of people. One person that was also a bad year for was Jalen Ramsey. Jalen Ramsey is considered one of the best corners in football, and he just he and the Rams as a whole had a bad year. I mean, the Rams were coming off a Super Bowl and didn't even make the playoffs. Like, didn't even come close. Aaron Donald got hurt, but even when he was in, they weren't really winning many games. It was just bad. And like I said with Aaron Rodgers, losing and down years give teams outs. Because it would be crazy to trade or get rid of somebody and they're coming off a peak year. They're coming off a really good year. If Jalen Ramsey played to the level that he has known to be, or he's known to play, and the level that his name warrants, there's no way that the Rams would even entertain trading somebody like him. Because now, yes, he is expensive, and yes, the Rams struggled last year. But again, it also goes, Jalen Ramsey struggled as well. If the Rams didn't struggle, like if the Rams made it to the playoffs, or if the Rams made some noise, made a big playoff run, or maybe came a game, if they made the playoffs, I think Jalen Ramsey would be on the team. But you don't make the playoffs, and now you're looking at the contract, and the contract's more expensive, and you look at it as, well, it's expensive, and it's not really leading to wins, so we can easily give him up. So now Jalen Ramsey gets traded to the Dolphins. This move right here is a last year I thought that if Tua didn't succeed with the roster that they had, they made those moves specifically for Tua. Last year, of course, you had Jalen Waddle, but you got Tyreek Hill. You have a legit number one receiver and a receiver that has the talent to be number one in Jalen Waddle. You also have Mike Gesicki. They made so many pieces, and the offensive line was good. They made so many pieces. Last year, I felt, was the year where they said, hey, we're giving you everything that you need to. If you do not succeed, we're going to have to move on, because you can't get any better than this. Now, statistically, Tua had a good season. Of course, we can talk about the injuries. We can talk about that. But statistically, he had a good season. But the good is, and of course, you can say how the season ended was due to injury. But I don't think, even if he would have stayed healthy, I don't think that the Dolphins were good enough to win the Super Bowl or even to make a deep run. Like, if you paired the Dolphins up against the Chiefs, I didn't think they were going to win. If you paired the Dolphins up against the Bengals, I didn't think they were going to win. I just, now this move, you bolster the offense. The offense is already bolstered. The offense is already really good. Now you bolster the defense. You pair the Dolphins now have arguably one of the best best backfields in the NFL. Now that you pair Jalen Ramsey with an Xavier Howard, This move wasn't solely based on Tua, but this move signifies every team, not every team. Oh, okay. One misnomer in sports is that every team goes for it. That is a lie. That is a lie. Of course, when you go in, you think to yourself, this could be our year. If this happens, we could make some noise. But once you've seen, you find out very quickly that this, and this isn't going to happen. Not every team goes for it. Some teams go to tanking quickly. Some teams go into the season. We may not have the good roster. We're going to tank. So, yeah, don't think to yourself that every team in professional sports goes for a championship. The Dolphins trading for Jalen Ramsey signifies that's exactly what they're doing. You got the big wide receiver or the big name wide receiver a year ago, and now you're getting the big name cornerback. I don't know. This, to me, the success of this team, the success of any team, honestly, is the play of their quarterback. Is a quarterback driven league. Hell, if that wasn't the case, the 49ers would win damn near every year because of the talent that they have on their team. But because there is a huge question mark at the quarterback position, that is why the 49ers have not been as successful in recent years as they could have been. Because if you look, last year, probably the 49ers had the best team. The year before, 49ers had the best team. The year they went to the Super Bowl, the 49ers had the best team. But you say all that, and 49ers only were in one Super Bowl. In those years, not altogether. The Dolphins, when you look up, the Dolphins have now one of the best rosters in football. And I think there's more on Tua's plate now than there has been. Now, of course, his health is more important than anything. That's without saying. But if we want to know how good Tua is, we will see the success or lack thereof success with the Dolphins, because there's not many holes at this point. Last year, one of the biggest holes was the backfield. While you had Xavier Howard, outside of that, it was kind of bare bones. Now you have Jalen Ramsey. And while Jalen Ramsey had a bad year last year, I do think that he's still a top cornerback. So you pair those two together. Then you also have a really good offensive or defensive front. And with I think Melvin Ingram's still on the team, like you have, and then of course the offense. We're really about to see how good Tua is. Now I know I said that last year with Tyreek Hill, and in the same exact feeling that I had last year, I have right now, just even more, because now you can't say, well, Tua was good, but the defense wasn't. You can't say that. Or Tua was good, but the back end of the defense kept giving up points. You can't say that anymore. Now, if Jalen Ramsey comes out and has a duplicate year than he did last year, then we have some problems. But it's on Tua. I know it sucks to say, but it's on Tua. We're going to see how good they are. The Dolphins, especially this year, like you don't make this move. You don't make a move to get Tyreek Hill. You don't make a move to get Jalen Ramsey if you don't think that you're good enough to contend. And that goes back to my point where it says not every team goes for it. You do not get Jalen Ramsey if you're not going for it, especially when you know how expensive he is. But he's only expensive if he's not producing. When Russell Wilson got that deal from the Broncos, we were saying, everyone was saying, "Yo, that's an expensive deal," but nobody was saying, "Wow, that's an expensive deal. That's not a good deal." When it happened, the only time people were saying that's a bad deal is when they started losing, and when we saw how the season went for the Broncos. You see, you're only expensive when you're not producing. So we're gonna see that Jalen Ramsey has an expensive contract, but it's well worth it if he's producing. And if you look, the Dolphins have one of the best rosters in football. And we're really going to see how good Tua Tagovailoa is. I know last year, and hopefully he has a injury-free season. Even though that's kind of hard, I don't wish injury upon injury. I don't wish injury upon anybody. But it's kind of hard to assume that, seeing as though he's been injured damn near every year of his career, including college. But I wish for a healthy season for Tua, but we're going to see just how good Tua is and how good it's on Tua, because the Dolphins are one of the best rosters in football, especially with this Jalen Ramsey move. So one position that is it loses its value year after year after year is the running back position. Because the physicalness and the physicality of the position, it's hard to build a team around a running back or pay a lot of money to a running back, which is one of the biggest reasons why you saw Daniel Jones get the contract that he got, but you saw Saquon Barkley get franchise tagged. Saquon Barkley is the Giants' best player, but he got franchise tag, and Daniel Jones got what he got. This is also one of the reasons why you see someone like Derrick Henry, who has been uniformly the best running back in football for a while, but the Titans haven't really done much. Now, I'm not saying that Derrick Henry will be traded, but he is available for trade. Austin Eckler is, I guess, him and his agent we're trying to get a deal done with the Chargers, but the Chargers have a history of not wanting to pay their running backs. Hell, they had LaDainian Tomlinson on this team, and damn near had to fight tooth and nail to get paid for this franchise. LaDainian Tomlinson, who is one of the greatest running backs we've ever seen, arguably could be the greatest running back we've ever seen, the Chargers did not want to pay him. So Austin Eckler was fighting an uphill battle. And we look now, and it looks like that the Chargers have granted his. They don't. Okay, so the Chargers are saying that they're not going to pay him what he wants. More than likely, he probably wants to be one of the highest paid running backs in the league, which I understand, because I also understand how important he is to the Chargers. So now the Chargers have granted him permission to seek a trade. And it looks like that's what he's doing. I know he requested a trade. They granted their request. Yo, go seek a trade. Go, you do that. I think this kind of shows how fickle the NFL can be, or how roller coastery. I know that's not a word, but I'm going to turn it into one. How roller coastery the NFL can be. Austin Eckler was one of the best running backs last year. And I'm not saying, pay him anything. But when I look at the fabric of my team, if I'm a GM or if I'm an owner and I look at how I determine who I pay and who I don't, I would look at what is their importance to the overall success of the team. And does their presence, does their performance, does their ability lead to positives, leads to winning? And what's baffling to me, now again, I understand the history of the Chargers, but what's baffling to me is how important Austin Eckler is, not just to the Chargers offense, but to Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert plays drastically better with Austin Eckler on the field. Now, people have touted Justin Herbert as one of the best quarterbacks in the league. And one of the best quarterbacks in the league plays better with this player, i.e. Austin Eckler. So it's like, if we want to maximize how good we are as a team, if we want to maximize how good we are as an offense, if we want to maximize our star player, he gets the most production with Austin Eckler on the field. Why not pay the man? I'm not saying pay him quarterback money. I'm not saying pay him wide receiver money. But why not pay him? Damn, I said it's not going to be a Lamar Jackson episode, but it kind of goes back to the Ravens and Lamar Jackson. You build your team around this player, and now you're playing chicken with this player when we talk about contracts. It is statistically proven that your best player in Justin Herbert plays better with Austin Eckler on the field, because how good Austin Eckler is at catching the ball and how good Austin Eckler as just a complete running back. And now you've granted his permission to seek a trade. I don't know. Now, of course, he could definitely return to the Chargers and ultimately get a deal done. But right now, it's looking like that's probably not going to happen. Austin Eckler is, again, one of the best running backs in the league, and clearly that doesn't matter these days. So, I don't know. Let's move forward. Shouts out to Taylor Heineke, man. Taylor Heineke goes to Atlanta. I think it's a 2-year deal for $20 million. I'm happy for Taylor. Clearly, he was with Washington. He is now at Atlanta. I'm not really talking about this because I'm not really talking about this because of Taylor. I'm talking about this story or this because there was a lot of free agency moves that happened. A lot of them. I mean, again, we just talked about Hargrave going to the 49ers, Sam Darnold going to 49ers. Jason Kelce came out and said that he's coming back to the Eagles. But in a bigger story, of course, we'll talk about this probably in a couple days or whatever, is the Eagles are losing a lot of players. And a lot of key players. Now, yes, Jason Kelce was one of them, and they were able to retain him. And Graham was another one. but they're both older, and they were able to retain Graham. But they're losing a lot of people. They're losing a lot of key defensive players. Key defensive players. And I don't know what's gonna happen. We still need to see about what's gonna happen with what's gonna happen with Bradbury. Like, that is a big story, but we'll talk about that when we talk about it. The reason why I brought up Taylor Heineke is this really solidifies. Damn, I said I wasn't gonna turn this into a Lamar Jackson episode. This solidifies that the Falcons are out on Lamar Jackson. Now, no, Taylor Heineke, I don't think is coming in to be a starter. You have Desmond Ridder. They invest a lot on Desmond Ridder. They want to just keep Desmond. But this just solidifies that I know that they said that they had no interest, but teams be lying. Atlanta definitely is not getting Lamar Jackson. And I think by the day, I'm walking my take back. I think it's starting to feel more and more like, especially with the 49ers now getting Sam Darnold, it's starting to feel more and more like Lamar Jackson will play again on. I think Lamar Jackson should hold out, but it feels like Lamar Jackson more than likely will play in Baltimore again on the franchise tag. I don't know what that's going to cause in the locker room. I don't know what that's going to create, but this is yet another team that is serious about, oh yeah, we're not going to pay Lamar Jackson what he wants. We'd rather pay Taylor Heineke $20 million. So, yeah, let's move forward. So March Madness is here. The tournament is finally here. We got to Selection Sunday. We did it all. We know the 64 teams that are in both the men's and women's tournament. And while no, I am not going to break down the entire bracket for each one. I know I did an episode of that a year or 2 years ago. Not doing that this year. I'm not doing that because of how wide open, at least the men's side is. You have the Alabama in the South, or the number one seeds in the regions. The South region is Alabama. The Midwest is Houston. The East is Purdue. The West is Kansas. This has been for a couple years now, and that is, there is more parity in at least college basketball than there's been since I can remember. And I don't think that's because there's just great teams. Now, yes, there are good teams. Don't get me wrong. Like, Alabama's a really good team. Purdue's a really good team. But I just think everyone is most teams are the equal playing field. Whether you think that's an incredible playing field, whether you think that's a low bar playing field, it's up to you. I just think that everyone is on an equal playing field. Now, I know that's easy to say when it's like, well, everyone has a chance to win a national championship. I just think this year, I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of people won the national championship. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to give my final four, and then I'm going to tell you who I have winning the national championship on both the men's and women's. Let me start with the men's, since I was just pretty much talking about the men's. Like I said, man, there is parity throughout. Anybody could win the national championship. And I think that when that's the case, players shine more than teams. Not saying, now, there's never been a team, because if you really look, there's never really. I don't remember the last time the best player in college basketball won the national championship. I mean, yeah, I don't remember the last time. I mean, because you can argue maybe last year. Like, yeah, I don't remember the last time the Wooden Award winner. Well, I think it was OG Adenobi. Not OG. Homie from Kansas. What I'm saying is this: when you have parity like this, you kind of lean towards star players because you have to find a competitive advantage somewhere. And when the field is this close, you lean on star players. So I say that to say, let's start with the South. The South, wow, yes, you have Alabama, you have Arizona. I think Virginia being at number 4 is crazy. You have Baylor, but we don't know about Baylor's best player. He might be out for the tournament. I think that the best players are going to have to shine because this is a tough tournament. I mean, West Virginia at 9 is tough. San Diego State at 5 is tough. I think that this region is going to come down to Brandon Miller and let me hold up. Let me look homie's name from Arizona. The tall dude's name because his name is crazy. What is his name? Starts with a. Oh, that's it. It's gonna be Brandon Miller and Trebellis. Azolas Trebellis. Yeah. I think it's gonna come between those two. Now again, you can feel how you feel about Brandon Miller. It is what it is. Especially off the court, but on the court, he has been the best player in college basketball, next to probably Zach Edey, the majority of this season. He for sure has been the best freshman this year. And while I like Arizona and I like Alabama, it's gonna come between Miller and Tabellis. And Tabellis has been one of the best. Now, I know I'm probably messing up your name, bro. I apologize. But Tabellis has been one of the best forwards in college basketball that we don't talk about a lot because a lot of times we don't really watch Arizona basketball, how late it comes on. But Arizona has been one of the best teams in college basketball. One thing that I can't get out of my head. I saw Brandon Miller put up, 41 points? And they almost lose that game. I think it went to overtime because Brandon Miller had to hit a clutch basket to take it into overtime, and he had to hit the game winner in overtime. I think that while Brandon Miller's good, the Alabama team as a whole isn't great. And I think that there's better players on Arizona as a whole than there is with Alabama. So I think Arizona will be coming out the South as far as the Final Four. And I think they will be playing. You see, I hate this, bro. I hate having to admit this. I really do. But when you talk about the East, to me, the East is a two. I don't like Purdue's guards. Of course, Purdue being the number 1 seed in the East. I don't like Purdue's guards. I think Zach Edey has been the best player overall in college basketball all year, but Purdue's guards are not that good. Boy, I hate it, but also one thing that you want to do coming into the tournament is you want to be playing the best basketball that you can be playing. And the hottest team right now in the East, and I'm not just saying because their record and everything, but Duke is clicking right now. I think that Duke, while yes, they're a young team, they are playing their best basketball at the right time. They just won the ACC tournament. I think Duke is going to come out the East. I think the Final Four is going to be Arizona and Duke. I really do. On that side. On the Midwest side, I think it really depends on the health of Houston's best player. If Houston's best play, if he can't play, because that's one of the biggest reasons why they that's their hesitation. Because I think there's only one team. I like most of these teams. Like I like Miami with Jordan Miller. I like Indiana. I like Xavier. But I think if Houston's best player isn't healthy, Texas is winning this. As far as winning the Midwest with Sir Jabari, I think it's going to be Texas. Texas has now Texas's best player. Texas did just win the Big 12. I think Texas is it's a two. I have Texas coming out the Midwest. I have Texas coming out the Midwest. In the West, to me, the West is the hardest region. They did not do Kansas any favors. To me, you have the best number two seed in UCLA in this region. You have the best number 3 seed in this region in Gonzaga, and you have the best number 4 seed in this region in UConn. They did not do Kansas any breaks. And on top of that, you also have TCU, who's on fire. Now, before Selection Sunday, I will admit, before Selection Sunday, I had Kansas winning it all. I think it kind of reason why I have Duke coming out the East. You're playing the best basketball at the right time. Now, yes, I know they lost the Big 12 championship, but Jalen Wilson, you're playing the best basketball that you can right now. But I look at this, it is a gauntlet. They are going to have to go against. For some reason, I get it. The sleeper in this, not sleeper, because a lot of people are picking them, in the West is UConn. UConn has been one of the best teams all year. Now, yes, they did go through a mean skid in the middle of the season, but they have been the best team. They've been one of the best teams this year. And I understand, why they would pick them. They have size, they have guard play, they have shooting, they have defense, they have everything that you need. I like UCLA. I like Tiger. I don't have any faith in Gonzaga in the slightest, at all. Even though I do think that the best 3 seed in this tournament, I don't think that. We've seen Gonzaga make it all the way to the national championship multiple times and lose every single time. To me, it's a two team. This is a 2-team race. It's between Kansas and UConn, and just so happens that if they both make it, they would have to see each other in the Sweet 16. I am going to go. That's gonna be tough. That's gonna be tough. I'm gonna go with Kansas. Because they did just win the national championship. Jalen Wilson is playing really good. Even though I do like UConn, I'm gonna go with Kansas. They're hot right now, even though they did just lose the Big 12 championship. So my final four is Arizona, Duke, Texas, and Kansas. I think Arizona's size and speed is going to be able to match up well with Duke's size and speed. And because of that, I have Arizona making it to the national championship, and I have Kansas making it to the national championship over Texas. And I have Kansas win the national championship again. First team since Florida to win back-to-back. First team on the men's side since Florida to win back-to-back. Yeah. And on the women's side, you have the Greenville region, or Greenville 1, Greenville 2, Seattle 3, Seattle 4. To me, this isn't as wide open as the men's side. I think that South Carolina has been dominant this entire year. I mean, they haven't lost. I do, and one thing that you do like, or that you do see, especially when we talk about the women's side, is they like rematches. They like interesting stories, which is why they put South Carolina and Maryland in the same region, which is why they put UCLA and Notre Dame in the same. Like, they like rematches, and they like what they like. While I like Maryland, I think South Carolina is definitely coming out the Greenville 1 region. They have been the best team this entire year. Don Staley has been the best coach. Aaliyah Boston, Zaya Cook. Definitely have South Carolina coming out of Greenville 1. Greenville 2 is a little more wide open, and even though I don't really like them because of the coach, even though she's been cool, I think that LSU is coming out of the Greenville 2. Angel Reese, she's from the crib. She has been arguably one of the best players in college basketball this entire year. In fact, they're three stumbles, because I think they're two stumbles. One of them was against South Carolina, and the other one they had a 16-point lead, I think, and lost it. I have LSU making it out of the Greenville 2. Seattle 3. To me, it's between, and I understand it's 1 and 2, but to me, it's between West Virginia and UConn. UConn, they have been kind of inconsistent this year, but when they're on, they're on. They're great rebounding. They have AZ Fudd. They now, yes, Paige Becker not being there is huge, but AZ's been really good. And Virginia Tech has was it them twins? Hold on. Virginia Tech has, give me a second. Kiana Taylor. I think it's Elizabeth. They have this one. I think it's Elizabeth. Definitely Elizabeth. It's Elizabeth Kitley. I know I probably said your name wrong. I apologize. If she go crazy, because she averages damn near 9. She has 19 points a game. God dang. I just think I have Virginia coming out. Virginia Tech. I have Virginia Tech coming out the Seattle 3. Because I just think that she's going to be big, and she is the best player between her and UConn. And I think she's probably the best player out this region, even though, look at my North Carolina. And they're the 6th seed. But, yeah. And Seattle, I have Stanford. I think Stanford's the best team in this region. While, yes, I do like Caitlin Clark, and I think Caitlin Clark's been going crazy this year. I just think that she isn't enough to get over the team that is Stanford. I mean, yeah, I don't see Duke winning. I don't see Texas. I have Stanford. So I have South Carolina and Stanford on one side, and I have LSU and Virginia Tech on the other. And I think, to me, it's gonna come down between, was it Haley Williams and Aaliyah Boston, and I just think South Carolina has been dominant this entire year. And while I like Stanford and I like exactly, Stanford's team, I think Stanford's probably one of, if not the best remaining teams outside of South Carolina State or South Carolina. I just think South Carolina is going to impose this will, and they have multiple people that, think about it, outside of Aaliyah Boston, you have Bria Beal. I mean, again, Zia Cook, Bree Hall. Like, you have really important and really good pieces and players. And while Bree Hall, she only averages 5 points. Like, she's integral. All these players are integral. So I have South Carolina making it back to the national championship, and I honestly have so it's LSU and Virginia Tech. I have LSU making it to the national championship. Again, let me see. Angel Reese is currently averaging. Give me a second. Angel Reese is currently averaging. Angel Reese. She's averaging 23, 16, and 2. Like, like, come on now. I just think Angel Reese, she is their best player, and I mean, and then you have Alexis Morris, who has 15 points a game. I think it's going to be South Carolina and LSU rematch in the national championship. And one thing that we know about one thing that we know about South Carolina is they are great when it comes to rematches. I think they're damn near undefeated when it comes to a rematch. So I have South Carolina winning the national championship on the women's side. The one question that I've gotten asked is, why haven't I talked about the Kings? And how do I feel about the Kings and their surgence this year? I think the Kings are one of the most surprise stories we've seen this year. I mean, this franchise hasn't seen a playoffs in I don't know how long. And now when you look, they're one of the best offenses in the league. They are third in the West. They are being led by Domantas Sabonis and De'Aaron Fox. I think that Mike Brown, in my opinion, should be coach of the year just because of how good, the leap that the Kings have made. And I think that the Kings are one of the best teams in basketball. And it kind of goes back to my argument that I had again with the Knicks. The question isn't how good are the Kings. The question is, how good can they be when it matters? And that, of course, is the playoffs. Again, don't get me wrong. I think the Kings, they've proven to be one of the best teams in basketball this year. And surely one of the best offenses in basketball. I think, actually, They are number 1. Yeah. Yeah, they're number 1 in the league in points per game. But here's why I kind of have pause for the Kings. And it kind of goes back to the argument that I had maybe a couple episodes ago about the Golden State Warriors. No, actually, this was the argument I had about the Dallas Mavericks. There has never been a team outside of like maybe one or two. I know one of the Lakers, the 2001 Lakers, I think. There's never been a team outside of the 2001 Lakers that has won a championship outside and have landed outside of the top 10 in defense. And while the Kings are one of the best, actually statistically the best offense in basketball, they are they are statistically the second. They are tied with second worst defenses in basketball. So, and I think they're tied with the opposing points per game. They're tied with the Detroit Pistons. They give up 118.6 points a game. So while I do like the story that is the Kings, I like how they will finally make the playoffs, and it looks like they're probably going to host a playoff game, or they're going to be a host team. And I have Mike Brown as Coach of the Year. I think with Mike Brown, it's honestly between him and homie from Boston, but I just think nobody saw this Kings team coming like this, so I have Mike Brown winning it. But again, while I like the Kings, you need to be able to get stops. One of the hardest things to do is continuously beat people because of your offense. Because once your offense starts to subside, or once your offense doesn't play too well, or a game, or maybe even a series where those shots that you usually hit aren't hitting, you have to be able to rely on your defense. Again, if you look back the last few years, right? You look back last year, Golden State, it was the play of Andrew Wiggins and his defense kind of slowing down to Jason Tatum that allowed, nobody outside of Steph Curry really was consistent offensively. The year before, the Phoenix Suns went up 2 games against the Milwaukee Bucks. 2 games. They won the first 2. All of a sudden, Milwaukee started playing lockdown defense. They won the next 4. I just think, while I like the Kings, I love the Kings, I don't like their chances in the playoffs because of their defense, or the lack thereof defense. Because, again, I like De'Aaron Fox. I like Domantas Sabonis. Those are great pieces, all-stars. But who is going to get the stops? Who is going to be able to play lockdown defense against a Steph or against a top player? That's one of the biggest reasons why I have question marks with Denver. I like the Kings, and I think the Kings deserve the credit that they deserve. I think the Kings are one of the best teams in basketball. And I think the Kings are one of the best stories in sports right now. I just don't know how good the Kings are going to be in the playoffs because they don't stop anybody. They don't play much defense. And that's the Kings. Lastly, before we go, I told you guys that, during Women's Month, I'm going to highlight a woman every episode. In this episode, I'm highlighting Lockwood. Autumn Lockwood. She is the first black woman to coach in the Super Bowl. One thing that I do appreciate and I love about women in general is a lot of times when they have stigmas on them, right? Or when there is a job or there is a section that they are they are probably pegged to not be able to breach, they do it. Hell, we just talked about Jennifer Taylor last year being the first African American woman to coach. Now, not saying a head coach, but be a coach on an NFL team, which has opened the door for a lot of people like Autumn Lockwood, who now became the first woman coach. She was an assistant coach for the Philadelphia Eagles. Again, man, women are incredible, bro. I'm not. For people that saying, because I saw a lot of people talking about this last episode, when I was talking about Jennifer Taylor, or is it Jennifer Lawrence? Jennifer, whatever. When I was talking about her, and they were like, "Well, she's not a head coach, or she's only a running back coach." Autumn Lockwood is only an assistant coach. Like she's not doing a head coach. She can't be a head coach. You're over here shining a light on somebody that's an assistant coach. Yeah, she could have been the first black woman to coach in the Super Bowl, but she's only assistant. Yeah, that is true. That is true. No, Autumn Lockwood is not a head coach. I know. Yeah. But you know what? I am not an assistant coach anywhere. You are not an assistant coach anywhere, let alone the NFL. So what are we talking about? Like, she's an assistant sports performance coach, bro. I don't know nothing about performance. I don't even stretch before I hoop or after I hoop. Wonder why I'm over here scooting around my house after a basic hoop session. And so what I'm saying is put some respect on these people's name, bro. Congratulations to Autumn Lockwood. Shouts out to you for allowing your hard work at ETSU, allowing all that hard work to get you to where the hell you are at now, and that is the assistant performance coach or sports performance coach for the Philadelphia Eagles, and becoming the first black woman in history to coach in the Super Bowl. Shouts out to you. And that you have it, man. That has been today's episode of the Unpopular Podcast. If you want an Unpopular Podcast shirt, hoodie, sweater, long sleeve joggers, the link is in the description below. I have multiple different colors, multiple different designs. Get your Unpopular Podcast merch today. It definitely means a lot. Also, please subscribe to if you're listening. Please subscribe to if you're watching. It definitely means a lot. I appreciate all the comments. I appreciate all the likes. I appreciate all the views. I try to engage with with anybody that responds. I do appreciate you guys. I really do. It means a lot. And until next time, much love.